All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and find the equation of this blue graph using a sine equation that you see there. We're going to use all of our transformations: amplitude, the b value, which is based off of the period, phase shift, and the midline. All right, when I do this, I like to go ahead and start with a low-hanging fruit. I love to go after that midline right away. You can see it right there in the middle. That midline cuts that graph right in half from the top to the bottom. You can see that that value is approximately 1. And that midline does go at the end of the equation. So I'm going to put +1 right there. Okay. One thing that I like to do to make my life a little bit easier is I like to go ahead and type in the midline. And that's going to help me with intersections later on. So there you can see it in black. There's our midline. Once I've got that done, I'm going to go right after the amplitude. Amplitude, nice and easy. We're going to take and start in the middle, and we're going to count our way up to the top or the crest. And we're going to go all the way down to the trough. Okay. Now you can see that the intervals are going 2 blocks equals 1. So you can see that goes 1, 2, and then over here it does the same thing, 1 and 2. So I'm going to take and I'm going to go back to my original equation right here. I'm going to make sure I've got the midline in there, and I'm going to put the amplitude right in front there. Now, notice that the green one is as high and as low as the blue one. So we are in great shape right now. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the green equation, and I'm going to go back to using the blue one. So we found the midline, we found the amplitude. Now what we are going to do is we are going to do the trickiest part. Well, one of the trickiest part, and that is find the b value. Well, how do we do the b value? First thing we have to do is determine what the period is. Okay, we know that we're dealing with sine, and one of the things that we know about sine is that sine starts at the midline and it normally goes up. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a wave of sine. I can see one right here where it starts at the midline and it goes up. And then I'm just going to follow it along until I find one whole period, which is right there. And so this Z-ish, this angled Z, or this wave, you can see going to the top, back down to the bottom, all the way to the top. You can see one whole period right there. Now, we need to find the period first. So I'm going to go ahead and find the intersections for that period. And you can see it's 7 pi over 12. And when we do that, we need to find the distance. The period is going to be that distance from the starting spot to the end. So what I'm going to do in order to find the distance, I'm going to say 5 pi over 4 minus 7 pi over 12. And when we do this, it's just simple. I'm going to find a common denominator. So I'm going to multiply both the top and the bottom by 3 so I can get that 12 down there. And so I'm going to get 15 pi over 12 minus 7 pi over 12. 15 pi minus 7 is going to be 8 pi over 12. And we can, of course, simplify by 4 on the numerator and the denominator. That'll be 2 pi over 3. Now, what does that give us? That gives us our period. Okay, so the period is equal to 2 pi over 3. Well, what is the b value? I've got it right in red. The b value is 2 pi over p. So if I want to find the b value, I need to say 2 pi divided by 2 pi over 3. Well, how do we handle that? Well, you should know I take 2 pi. I'm dividing by a fraction, so I change the division to multiplication, and I flip that fraction. Okay, 2 pi and 2 pi become 3. So the b value is 3. I took 2 pi and divided by the period. Let's go ahead and throw that into our equation. And I put it right here in the front. There is 3. And I'm going to turn it on just to see, hey, guess what? It looks like it's cycling at the same rate there. And so we just follow that out, and you can see it's kind of modeling it. Now, last thing we need to do is the phase shift. Okay, so we've got a sine graph right now. Okay, and you can see that sine is right here. And so we have a basic sine graph without a phase shift. And what does sine do? It starts on the y-axis and the midline, the intersection of the y-axis and the midline, and then it goes up. Notice the blue graph does not do that. So we've got to go and find out where the blue graph hits the intersection of the midline and goes up. Check it out. Right here, it goes up, okay? In fact, it even does that right here, okay? And check it out, back here, it does it as well, okay? So let's go ahead and just click on some of those points because we're gonna see what we can do with those points. I'm gonna click on this one, click on this one, and I'm gonna click on this one, okay? I'm gonna get that green graph to shift to the right to this point of 7 pi over 12. Okay, so that point right here, 7 pi over 12, right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. When I shift it over to that point, 7 pi over 12, I'm moving it to the right. So I'm just going to simply write minus 7 pi over 12. And guess what? It overlaps it. And that just brought the starting point over here. Now, some people are like, well, how did you know just to use that point? Guess what? It doesn't matter what point, as long as we go back to the idea that sine starts at the midline and goes up, starts at the midline and goes up, starts at the midline and goes up. So I can come out to this 5 pi over 4. Check it out. I can go to this point right here, 5 pi over 4. We moved it to the right. Let's type it in. Okay, let's type that in. 5 pi over 4, boom, it still lines up on it. Everybody's like, well, those 2 points work. Are there any more points that work? Well, yeah. Let's go over to this one. That's negative pi over 12. That moved it to the left. Okay, so if we move it to the left, instead of using a minus, I'm going to use a positive. So I'm going to say negative. So that moving it over to the left, we change it to a positive. We do the opposite. So I'm going to write pi over 12. So pi over 12. We can use any point as long as it follows the form of the sine graph. So we use a phase shift. So now we've taken that original equation sine x and we've transferred it on by finding the midline, the amplitude, the period, which we use to find the b value, and then we located points along the midline that helped us determine what the phase shift was. All right, guys, I hope that helps you out with making these equations.